a certain incident in the winter of 1770, which some of you may know as the Boston Massacre. Yes. After, of course, a group of Boston men and boys accosted and attacked a regiment of British soldiers, both verbally and physically, with anything that they could throw. The shouts and the confusion turned the shouts to shots, and 5 men died that evening, and a 6th soon after. And the very next day I was brought to the attention of those soldiers, and a young fellow by the name of James Forrest, known lovingly as the Irish Infant, ran into my office, mere steps away from where the actual supposed massacre had taken place. And he came to me, and he lived up to his nickname with tears streaming down his swollen cheeks, and he said, "Oh, I come with an urgent request from Captain Preston and his men in prison. They desire counsel and can get none." Well, of course, I was very much concerned with why I was brought to their attention. To be a lawyer in Boston, I certainly was pleased to have some reputation, but I was a lawyer in Boston, the town that had tarred and feathered tax collectors and, of course, torn down the lieutenant governor's house from cellar to attic. Of course, they started with the wine cellar and they worked their way from there. And, of course, in a town that had made the most noise complaining about the taxation that we had received in regards to the 7 Years' War, lovingly titled because it lasted 9 years, but because we dared to complain about being taxed improperly without even so much as the courtesy of a call for consent, the town of Boston was occupied. And in addition to the British Army's occupation, there was also the subjugation and the taxation on top of that. And so for a citizen of Boston to be seen as defending British soldiers, well, of course, that would go very well for me, wouldn't it? It is very possible that I might not only lose the opportunity to practice law in Boston or Massachusetts at all, but would I be able to provide for my family, my wife, my children? I feared there would be no opportunity for me at all. But what was more important, even more important still, was the fact that the world was watching this upstart band of colonists and seeing how we would take this action. And I believed that I viewed it as very much the soldiers did, that they feared that if they did not receive counsel and proper representation, they would find themselves at the end of mob justice, which is to say a hangman's noose. And I knew that we could not be seen as a lawless land, but a land of justice. And I told Mr. Forrest, without hesitation, if his men desired counsel, they would have it. And I shall not labor you with the weeks of testimony of the 24 witnesses, nor my day and a half of closing arguments, but suffice it to say that I was able to exonerate 6 of the soldiers and their captain. The only 2 that were convicted, of course, were the 2 that fired their guns, and they were convicted of manslaughter, and because of a rather medieval remnant, they were branded upon their thumbs. I do not recommend it, but it is much better than hanging.